At my daughter's rehearsal dinner, my future son-in-law looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sign over the ranch, or don't bother showing up to the wedding." He called me a broke veteran, living off government handouts in front of 50 guests. But here's what Jason didn't know. That ranch he was demanding, I bought it in 1989 with cash from 12 years of military contract work overseas. The mineral rights beneath those 2,000 acres? They've been paying me $90,000 a year since 2015 when they struck natural gas. And that broken down old man he was humiliating? I'm Robert Hayes, and I've been letting him think whatever he wanted, while I decided if my daughter Emily really wanted to marry a man like that. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. If you're new to Hallowed Vengeance, hit subscribe. I share stories about standing up when people think you're too old to fight back. And trust me, what happened at that wedding 3 days later changed everything. Because assumptions about veterans, about age, about quiet men who drive old trucks, those assumptions cost Jason more than he could imagine. Let me start from the beginning. The warning signs were there from day one. I just chose to give him the benefit of the doubt. When Emily brought Jason home to the ranch 18 months ago, he pulled up in a BMW 7 Series that probably cost more than I spent on vehicles in the past decade. He stepped out, wearing shoes that cost what I pay for a month of hay. He looked at my 2006 Ford F-150 like it was something he'd see in a junkyard. "So this is the famous ranch," Jason said, not even trying to hide his disappointment. He was expecting something from Yellowstone, all those TV show fantasy ranches with million-dollar lodges. What he saw was a working property. Practical barn, functional fences, a modest ranch house I built myself in 1991. Emily had stars in her eyes. She'd moved to Denver 6 years ago for law school and stayed for her career. Corporate law, big firm, the kind of success that made me proud even though it meant I only saw her a few times a year. Jason was a real estate developer. Commercial properties. He talked about his deals like a general talks about campaigns. Conquered this building, acquired that land, demolished something historic to put up something profitable. That first dinner, I made elk steaks from last season's hunt. Jason pushed the meat around his plate. "I'm more of a sushi guy," he said. "Emily, we should take your dad to that new place in Bozeman. Introduce him to real food." Real food. Like the elk I'd tracked for 6 hours through snow, field-dressed myself, and aged properly wasn't real enough. I let it slide. Emily was happy. That mattered more than Jason's ignorance. Over the next year, the comments kept coming. Always casual, always in front of Emily, always designed to make me look small while making him look generous for tolerating me. "Don't worry about the wedding costs, Emily. I know your dad's situation. We'll handle everything." My situation, like I was a charity case. "We should probably have the wedding in Denver. Your dad's place is a bit too rustic for my family." Rustic. Code for embarrassing. "After we're married, we'll help you figure out your dad's living arrangements." That ranch is a lot for a man his age. Living arrangements? Like I was a problem that needed solving. I watched him slowly build this narrative. Robert Hayes, 4-year-old veteran, lives alone on a deteriorating ranch. Probably surviving on VA disability and Social Security. Probably should be in some kind of assisted living. Probably needs his successful daughter and her wealthy fiancé to take care of him. Emily started believing it. I could see it happening. She'd visit the ranch and notice things she'd never noticed before. "Dad, this roof needs work." It was fine. "Dad, when's the last time you saw a doctor?" "Last month?" "Dad, Jason and I have been talking. Maybe it's time to think about selling this place. You could move closer to us. We'd help you find a nice condo." A nice condo. She was 28 years old. Brilliant. But she'd been living in Denver long enough to forget what this ranch meant. This wasn't just property. This was her mother's dream. Sarah and I bought this land before Emily was born. 1,400 acres initially, scraping together every dollar from my contractor pay. Sarah died when Emily was 12. Breast cancer. Those last months, she made me promise to keep the ranch, to keep Emily's inheritance safe. I bought 600 more acres in 2003. Paid cash. The mineral rights came with it, though nobody knew what they were worth back then. When the energy company approached me in 2014 about exploratory drilling, I negotiated a lease that's paid me $90,000 annually since they struck gas. I'd been putting that money away for Emily, for her future, for my grandchildren someday. But I never told her about the royalties, never told her about the investments. She knew I was comfortable, but she'd been gone so long, living in her expensive Denver world, that she'd started seeing me through their eyes. Old truck. Simple clothes, no expensive vacations, must be struggling. Jason had no idea, none, and I was curious to see how far his assumptions would take him. The answer came at the rehearsal dinner. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. The rehearsal dinner was Thursday the 13th at the Bozeman Country Club. Jason insisted on hosting. His parents flew in from California. His brother and sister brought their families. 50 guests total, most of them Jason's people. My side of the family was smaller. My brother Frank and his wife, a few old friends from my military days, Emily's godfather who'd served with me in Bosnia. I drove my old F-150, wore my good suit, the one I'd bought for Sarah's funeral 20 years ago. Still fit, still serviceable. I pulled into the parking lot full of Mercedes and Teslas and didn't think twice about it. Jason's father, Richard, was a commercial real estate mogul, made his money in California strip malls and office buildings. He greeted me with a handshake that lasted exactly 1 second. "You must be Bob." "Jason tells me you're, what, retired military?" "Former contractor," I said. "Logistics and security." That was it. Just, like he'd placed me in some category and moved on. Jason's mother, Patricia, gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's so sweet that Emily wanted to include your little ranch in the wedding activities. Jason said you have horses?" "Little ranch. I owned more land than their entire California neighborhood sat on, but sure. Little ranch." Dinner started with speeches. Richard stood up and talked about Jason's accomplishments, his business deals, his MBA from Stanford, his bright future. Then he turned to me. "Robert, I understand you live out in the country. Ranching must be, well, it must be quiet out there. Different from the life our Emily's built for herself in Denver. Different, code for lesser." I nodded, said nothing. Frank, sitting next to me, tensed. He knew that look on my face, the one that appears right before I make a decision. The meal continued. Expensive steaks, I could tell, came from commercial feedlots, not grass-fed like my cattle. Wine that cost more than it should. Jason kept refilling his glass, getting louder, more confident. Then he stood up for his speech. Started normal enough. How much he loved Emily, how excited he was for their future. Then he pivoted. "I also want to thank Robert for trusting us with Emily's future. I know it can't be easy, seeing your daughter leave the simple life behind." Simple life. There it was again. Emily's told me about growing up on the ranch. Very rustic, very isolated. I think she's ready for something more substantial now, more stable. He looked directly at me. "Which is actually something I wanted to discuss, Robert. Emily and I have been talking about your situation." The room went quiet. My situation. Third time he'd used that phrase. "We know the ranch is a lot to maintain at your age. We know finances are probably tight on a veteran's income." He wasn't asking. He was announcing, in front of 50 people. "Jason," Emily whispered, tugging his sleeve. He ignored her. "So Emily and I have made a decision. After the wedding, we're going to help you transition. We've looked into some excellent senior communities near Denver. You could sell the ranch, use that money to set yourself up somewhere manageable, somewhere closer to family." Frank's chair scraped. I put a hand on his arm. "Not yet. We could even handle the sale for you," Jason continued. "I have connections in Montana real estate. We'd make sure you got fair value." Fair value. From the man who'd never asked what the property was worth. In fact, Jason reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder. I had my attorney draw up some preliminary papers. "Just to get the process started. With your permission, of course." He walked over and set the folder in front of me. Contract of intent to sell. I didn't even open it. "Jason," Emily stood up now, her face red. "This isn't the time." "It's the perfect time, honey. Your dad needs to face reality. That ranch is bleeding money. He's too proud to ask for help, so we're offering it. It's the right thing to do." Jason turned to the room, playing to his audience. "Robert's been a good father, working hard his whole life. But there comes a time when we have to accept our limitations. Age, financial constraints. The world's changed since his day. His day. Like I was some relic from the 1800s. Richard nodded approvingly. Patricia smiled. Jason's siblings looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Emily looked horrified. "So what do you say, Robert? Let's get this signed tonight. Start fresh. Let the kids take care of the old business so you can enjoy your retirement properly." Jason held out a pen. "Expected me to sign. Right there, in front of everyone. Transfer my land, my wife's dream, my daughter's inheritance, to him. Because he'd decided I was too old, too poor, too simple to manage my own life." I looked at that pen, looked at the contract, looked at Jason's confident smirk. Then I stood up slowly. Every eye in the room locked on me. "Jason," I said quietly, "you've made a lot of assumptions about me, about my finances, about my capabilities, about what I need. I'm just trying to help," he said. "Emily's worried about you." I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were wet. "Is that true, honey?" Emily shook her head. "I never said... I mentioned that the ranch was big, but I never asked him to." "It's okay," I said to her. Then, to Jason, "You want to know about my situation? Let me clarify something. That ranch you're so eager to sell? I own it outright. Bought the original 1,400 acres in 1989 for $380,000. Paid cash from my contractor savings. Added 600 acres in 2003. Another $420,000. Also cash." Jason's smirk faltered. That's good. But the maintenance costs, the property taxes. The property taxes are $18,000 annually. I pay them from my mineral rights royalties. Natural gas lease. Pays me $90,000 a year. Has since 2015. Before that, I managed just fine on my investment portfolio. The room was absolutely silent now. "Investment portfolio?" Richard's voice had changed. He was listening now. "Defense contractor work pays well if you're smart with it, especially overseas. Especially if you don't spend it on things you don't need. I've got just over $800,000 in index funds and bonds. Conservative, but it does fine." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned it so Jason could see the balance. His face went white. "But the truck," he stammered. "The clothes. You live so simply?" I finished. "Yeah, that's called not being an idiot with money. I drive a truck that works. I wear clothes that fit. I don't need to prove anything to anybody, unlike some people." I picked up his contract and tore it in half. "You want to know what I need, Jason? I need a son-in-law who respects me, who asks questions before making assumptions, who treats my daughter's father like a man instead of a burden." Jason opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Richard stood up. "Jason, perhaps we should." "No," I said. "Let him finish. He started this conversation in public. Let's finish it in public." I turned to Jason. "You said I'm too old to manage the ranch. I'm 64. I can still outwork men half my age. You said finances are tight. I just showed you my finances. Better than tight. You said you'd get me fair value on the ranch. You know what fair value is?" He shook his head. "The land alone is worth $2.3 million at current market rates for Montana ranch property. The mineral rights, with 9 more years on the gas lease and proven reserves, those are worth another $1.5 million minimum. Probably more if I renegotiate when the lease ends. So you were going to help me sell $3. $8 million in assets, so I could move into a senior community condo?" Patricia gasped. Richard sat down hard. Emily covered her mouth. "But you never told anyone?" Jason said weakly. "Emily didn't know. How was I supposed to know?" "You could have asked. You could have had a conversation instead of a condescending assumption. You could have treated me like an adult instead of a problem." I looked around the room. Jason's been telling everyone I'm a charity case. A broke old veteran who needs rescuing. That's what he's been saying for 18 months. That's the story he's built about me. Frank stood up. And we've all heard it. At Christmas, at Easter, every time. Jason's talking about poor Robert, struggling Robert, Robert, who needs help. My brother's voice was hard. Except Robert doesn't need help. Robert's doing just fine. Robert's always done just fine. We tried to tell Emily, but she'd been listening to Jason so long she started believing it. Emily was crying now. Dad, I didn't know. You never said anything about the money. I thought you were just being proud. I wasn't being proud, honey. I was being private. There's a difference. Money isn't something I discuss unless there's a reason. Jason never gave me a reason. He gave me assumptions and insults instead. I turned back to Jason. You know what the sad part is? If you'd approached this differently, if you'd asked respectfully about the ranch's future, about what happens after I'm gone, we could have had a real conversation. Emily's my only child. Everything I have is already hers eventually. But you didn't want a conversation. You wanted control. That's not true, Jason said, but his voice had no conviction. I was trying to help the family. You were trying to acquire an asset. That's what you do. That's all you know. Commercial developer sees an opportunity, makes a move. Except this isn't a strip mall, Jason. This is my home, my late wife's dream, my daughter's inheritance. And you just tried to trick me into signing it over at a rehearsal dinner. The weight of what he'd done was settling on Jason's face. Around the room, his family looked mortified. His mother wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. His father was staring at the tablecloth. Richard finally spoke. Jason, I think you owe Robert an apology. I think Jason owes Emily an apology, I said. I'm just her father. She's the one who has to decide if she wants to marry a man who treats her family like this. Emily was staring at Jason like she'd never seen him before. You told me my dad needed help. You told me he was struggling. You made me feel guilty for not doing more. And it was all a misunderstanding, Jason tried. Baby, I thought. You thought you knew better than everyone. You thought you could manage my dad's life. You didn't ask me. You didn't ask him. You just decided. Emily picked up her napkin, set it on the table, and walked out. The dining room door closed behind her with a final click. Jason looked at me. This is your fault. You embarrassed me. You could have pulled me aside, explained privately. Like you did for me? I asked. When you announced my supposed poverty in front of 50 people? When you pulled out contracts at a rehearsal dinner? You wanted a public show, Jason. You got one. Just not the one you expected. I picked up my jacket. Frank, you ready? My brother nodded. We walked out together. Behind us, chaos erupted. Voices arguing, Patricia crying, Richard's voice raised in anger. I didn't look back. Outside, Emily was sitting on a bench, her face in her hands. I sat down next to her. She leaned into my shoulder like she was 12 years old again. I'm so sorry, Dad. You don't have anything to be sorry for. I believed him. I thought you were struggling. I thought I was being a bad daughter for not helping more. She was sobbing now. I should have asked. I should have talked to you instead of listening to him. He's a smooth talker. He's good at building narratives. That's part of his job. I put my arm around her. But honey, you need to ask yourself something. If he lied about me, what else might he lie about? If he made decisions about your family without consulting you, what decisions might he make about your marriage without consulting you? She was quiet for a long time. The wedding's in 2 days. I know. 200 guests. Deposits paid. Dress fitted. Cake ordered. She wiped her eyes. And I don't want to marry him. That's my girl. Then don't. But everyone's here. His family, your friends, the money we've spent. Emily, I turned her to face me. Your mother and I got married at the courthouse in Billings. Spent $75 on the license and $200 on dinner after. Best decision I ever made. You know why? Because you loved her. Because I respected her. And she respected me. Everything else was just details. Respect isn't negotiable. It's not something you compromise on. It's not something you earn back after you lose it. It's the foundation. Without it, you've got nothing. Emily nodded slowly. What do I do? What do you want to do? I want to go home. To the ranch. I want to wake up in my old room and remember who I am instead of who Jason thinks I should be. Then let's go. We stood up. Jason burst through the door. Emily, wait. We need to talk about this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it. We can postpone the wedding, do some counseling, work through this. Emily looked at him, really looked at him. Jason, you tried to steal my inheritance. You humiliated my father. You lied to me for 18 months. There's no working through that. There's no postponing that. There's just ending it. She pulled off her engagement ring. The diamond caught the parking lot lights. Probably cost him $30,000. She handed it back. I'm sorry. I thought you were someone you're not. My mistake for not seeing it sooner. You're making a huge mistake, Jason said. Walking away from this. From us. From the life we could have. The life you planned without asking me what I wanted? Emily shook her head. No thanks. I'd rather have a simple life with respect than a complicated life with someone who thinks my father is a problem to solve. She got in my truck. I got in the driver's side. Jason stood in the parking lot, still holding the ring, looking lost. As we pulled away, Frank followed in his truck. We drove the 90 miles back to the ranch in silence. Emily stared out the window at the mountains, at the big Montana sky, at the land she'd grown up on and nearly let someone convince her didn't matter. When we got home, she went straight to the barn. I found her 20 minutes later, sitting in the hayloft where she used to read books as a kid. You okay? I don't know. Ask me in a week. She patted the hay next to her. I climbed up. We sat there like we used to when she was young and something was bothering her. Did you know, she asked finally, that he was like that? I suspected. Hoped I was wrong. But the way he talked, the assumptions he made, the way he looked at the ranch like it was something to exploit instead of something to treasure, yeah, I had concerns. Why didn't you say something? Because you're an adult. You get to make your own choices. Even wrong ones. I figured either you'd see through him eventually, or I'd learn to live with him for your sake. But tonight he crossed a line. Trying to take the ranch wasn't about helping me. It was about control. About owning something he thought was valuable. Once I showed him it was more valuable than he thought. Watch how fast his whole approach changed. Emily was quiet. He didn't even apologize to you. Just to himself for getting caught. Some people are like that. They're only sorry when the cost is too high. Not sorry for the action itself. I looked out the hayloft window at the pastures, at the mountains beyond. Your mother and I bought this place because we wanted something real, something that would last, something we could build a life on. Not for money, not for status, for meaning. Jason wouldn't understand that if I explained it for 100 years. I almost gave it all away. I almost let him convince me you needed to sell. But you didn't. And now you know better. That's growth, honey. That's wisdom. We sat there until the stars came out. Until the ranch settled into its nighttime sounds. Until Emily's breathing evened out and I knew she'd be okay. Friday morning, my phone exploded with messages. Richard calling to apologize. Patricia texting that Jason was going through a difficult time. Jason's brother asking if there was any way to salvage the situation. I ignored them all. This wasn't my mess to clean up. Emily handled it. She made calls, canceled the wedding, dealt with the venue and the caterers and the florist. Her law firm training showed. She was calm, professional, matter of fact. Yes, the wedding's off. No, we're not rescheduling. Yes, we're sure. Thank you for understanding. Saturday morning, the day the wedding should have happened, we went riding. Just Emily and me, like old times. We rode out to the north pasture, where Sarah's ashes were scattered. Emily stood there for a long time. Mom would have hated him, wouldn't she? Your mother would have been polite. Then she would have taken me aside and said, Robert, that boy's trouble. Fix it. Emily laughed. Actually laughed. First time in 2 days. I miss her. Me too. Every day. We rode back slowly. At the barn, Emily said, I think I'm going to take some time off work. Stay here for a while. Remember what matters. You're always welcome. This is your home. That evening, Frank came by with steaks and beer. We grilled out, sat on the porch, watched the sunset. You handled that well, Frank said. Didn't have much choice. You had every choice. You could have signed his papers, stayed quiet, let him think he'd won. You chose to stand up, at the right moment, in the right way. That takes guts. Frank raised his beer. To Robert Hayes, the man who proved that quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective, I finished. We drank to that. Monday morning, Jason showed up at the ranch. I saw his BMW coming up the drive. Emily was in town getting groceries. I met him at the gate. Jason. Robert, I need to talk to you. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved, hadn't slept, still wearing yesterday's clothes. I made a mistake. A big one. I want to apologize. Properly. Okay. I let my professional instincts override my personal judgment. I saw an asset, a property, and I treated it like a deal instead of like your home. That was wrong. I'm sorry. He meant it. I could tell. Problem was, meaning it didn't change what he'd done. Jason, I appreciate the apology. But it's not me you need to convince. It's Emily. And honestly, I don't think you can. Why not? People make mistakes. People deserve second chances. People deserve respect. You didn't give her that. You made decisions about her family, her inheritance, her future, all without asking her what she wanted. That's not a mistake, Jason. That's who you are. You're a deal maker. Everything's a transaction. Even relationships. Jason's shoulders sagged. So that's it? It's over? That's up to Emily. But if you're asking my opinion, yeah, it's over. She deserves someone who sees her father as a person, not a problem. Someone who asks questions instead of making assumptions. Someone who treats family like family instead of like acquisitions. He nodded slowly, got back in his BMW, drove away. I never saw him again. Emily came back an hour later with groceries. Was that Jason's car I saw leaving? Yeah. What did he want? To apologize. I told him to talk to you if he wanted forgiveness. I'm guessing he won't. Good. She started unpacking groceries. I've been thinking about my job, about Denver, about what I want. I think I want to come home. Not forever, maybe. But for now, this ranch needs someone who cares about it, who understands what it means. I can do some law work remotely, help you with the operations, learn how you've managed everything all these years. My throat got tight. You sure? Dad, I spent 6 years trying to be someone I'm not, trying to fit into Jason's world, trying to prove I belonged in those glass towers and expensive restaurants. But I don't. I belong here, with you, with the land Mom loved, with the life that actually matters. She put her hand on mine. Teach me about the ranch, about the mineral rights, about the investments. I want to know how you built this, how you protected it, how you knew when to stay quiet and when to speak up. So I did. Over the next few months, I taught Emily everything. How to read the land lease agreements, how the mineral rights worked, how I'd invested over the years. She learned fast, asked smart questions, saw opportunities I'd missed. By fall, she'd renegotiated our gas lease for better terms. By winter, she'd found 3 conservation easements that protected the land and gave us tax benefits. She also changed. The Denver polish faded. She started wearing her mother's old boots, started riding every morning, started talking about the ranch like it was hers, because it was. It always had been. One evening in December, we sat on the porch watching snow fall. You ever regret it? Emily asked. Calling Jason out like that? Embarrassing him in front of everyone? I thought about it. No, because I didn't embarrass him. He embarrassed himself. I just told the truth. There's a difference. He tried to steal from us. He tried to steal. We didn't let him. That's what matters. I looked at my daughter, strong and capable, and finally home where she belonged. You know what your mother used to say? Robert, the best revenge is living well. Jason's back in Denver, probably making the same mistakes with someone else. We're here, living the life we chose, on our terms. Who really won? Emily smiled. We did. Damn right we did. If you're watching this, and you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your simple lifestyle, or your quiet nature, leave a comment. Have you ever had to remind someone that respect isn't negotiable, that assumptions can cost you everything. Sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply showing them the truth. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything at all. Until next time, remember what I learned the hard way. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective. And when quiet men finally speak, smart people listen. The ones who don't, they learn expensive lessons.